Can you guys see my screen here with the angels and the council?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, excellent. Thank you guys for tuning in to another week of angels, what Heiser says about them.
Woohoo.
Um, so, as a quick wrap up, last week we were still in the middle of chapter two. I'm talking about how God basically is a student council president or a divine council president in a way where he sits over his heavenly court and he rules and reigns, and then all the other council members participate in and do the will of the head of the council, right?
Right.
So yeah, so the divine, think of it like a divine council president. I put the badge in there for humor factor, but it's essentially what Heiser is zoning in on and presenting us in a cosmos where Yahweh has this heavenly court, right? And here's a great image of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth I with her court in England. And you see she sits up on the throne ruling, and you have all the rest of the council members of parliament around her participating in her decisions because it is ultimately her say so.
Right.
So it's an analog to what that is. Now, and I believe there's a difficulty with Americans because with us being, bicameral Republicans, we don't really have this kind of system with where the president does that over the council in a parliamentary way.
Mm.
Because, it's they vote amongst themselves to do something. It has to be approved by the Senate, by the House, and then passed by the president. There's the systems of checks and balances, right?
Right.
Well, Yahweh doesn't have a check. It's I want it done, do it now, because it's a monarchy. And so I feel an American audience is going to have trouble understanding this because we don't have a monarchical culture. In fact, our country was built on anti-monarchy, so we're not going to get this motif, right?
Right. We have a distinct problem with how to live a life under a monarch, Jesus, and in a um, in one sense, and then how do we live with, Lockean, Jeffersonian liberty on the other side? The
Right.
two really clash.
Yeah, and so yeah, but all it will indeed clash because it's designed to clash.
Yep.
But at the same time, oh, what was I going to say? I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Um, yeah, it's just it's just the world is monarchical and hierarchical, and America tries not to be, but it just can't avoid reality.
Hmm.
But that's a big discussion for another day,
Exactly.
right? But yeah, but the big point of cross to carry over is because I believe there's a I was reading Cicero on the nature of the gods, where he says that Zeus rules the cosmos, by his nod,
Mm.
and which because in the classical polytheist system, Zeus or Jupiter is king of the gods, and he sits at the head of the divine council in those polytheist frames. So all the other gods, yeah, as that Zeus is seated, all the other gods are around him, and they can discuss, but it's always him because Zeus is the master of the universe, overthrowing his father El
Right.
or Saturn, which gives him kingship over the universe, right? And so to the polytheist, this is an easy understanding. Like they'll get this.
Yep.
But if you're any kind of, I hate monarchy or hierarchy at all, you're not going to understand this concept because, yeah. Anyway, So again, we also see courtroom scenes like this in I think it's uh, First Kings 19, whatever Heiser's favorite verse is in the Book of Kings
Oh,
that he harps
yeah.
on all the time. It's in that verse, the Ancient of Days verses in Daniel, Psalm 82, of course, which is Heiser's like number one magnum opus favorite verse, tattooed on his arm.
Yep.
So like that's his favorite verse. Yeah, it's this heavenly courtroom language, and pretty much most of the angels material we've gone over so far is figuring out how this heavenly court works. But it's all centered around this heavenly court, which is seated in ancient Near East, Egypt, Babylon. Like any monarchical system will understand this,
Yep.
right? You know, oh, wrong button, wrong button. There we go. All right. So part of this, where Heiser discusses, dives into angels being intercessors because that's their chief job as angeloi messengers or malachim, which we've discussed prior. They act as an intermediary between God and man, right?
Hmm.
So, so what happens is he takes a moment on an aside to sit and pick at this question that happened around the first century rabbinic circles is, did angels give the Torah? So, so the idea is that when you read Exodus, and you read the accounts of Israel at Mount Sinai, the idea is that God gives the tablets to Charlton Heston, and then Charlton Heston takes them down to the people, right?
Hmm.
However, was it actually God, or was it God and the angels present? Because the angels were a witness to God giving the Torah or the Ten Commandments to Moses. Because there's a verse that says that he came forward with his 10,000 holy ones to give the Torah to Israel. Is that, well, is, did Yahweh hand it off to the angels to give to Moses to give to the people, or did Yahweh do it directly and the angels were watching? And so rabbis were discussing this, and at the same time, even Paul sounds off on this debate because you have Acts 7:53, Galatians 3:19, and Hebrews 2:2, is that the New Testament Jewish authors are sounding off on this debate and sort of coming off on the line. Now, Marcion, I think, no, not no, but there is a thought that it would the angels gave you the Torah to oppress you, but Yahweh sent Jesus to liberate you from the Torah so you can be free from whatever. I Yeah, it does sound crazy, Emily, but um, I apologize if that doesn't make any sense. We can sit and do a deep dive, but the idea is that this debate highlights what angels are doing in God's counsel in the giving of the Torah,
Yeah. Well,
right?
it's just take each one. Acts 7:53. You received the law as delivered by angels and did not keep it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
And then Galatians 3:19. Uh, Flip over to that. And why then the law? It was added because of transgressions until the offspring should come, whom the promise had been made. It was put in place through angels by an intermediary. So
Yeah.
again, you've got the argument, right?
Yep.
So who are the angels?
Exactly. So, because the angel could be Moses himself,
Correct.
it could be referring to Moses. It could be a shiny guy with wings strumming a harp on a cloud. It could be the eyeball thing, the
Uh-huh.
winged eyeball thing.
Yep. Yep.
It could be any of those. It could be a member of Heavenly's court, or it could be a euphemism for Moses. But all the same, rabbis were picking this apart. But this sheds light on, angels, because Heiser's about to go into that angels, as part of the divine council, are witnesses and participate in the decrees of Yahweh from His throne in the heavenly court.
Right.
That's where this is ultimately leading. If I
Yep.
lost anyone, I sincerely apologize if I'm confusing or
Mm,
sounding weird.
no.
Um, yeah, so in the Septuagint, however, the Grecian cognate of kadosh, or mirias kades, suggests that, which actually that might be a Hebraism. Suggests that angels were the ones there to interact with Moses, being how Yahweh's right hand goes forth to give the Torah. Well, is it capital R, capital H, right hand?
Mm-hmm.
Is it just a poetic expression of God bringing His power forth through His dominant hand
Mm-hmm.
to give the Torah? I mean, it could go several ways.
It could.
That's why rabbis still bicker over the Torah to this day. It's that it could have multiple meanings to the text. It's not any
Yeah.
just one.
Yep.
It's multifaceted.
You've got now I don't know if there's a place where the angel of the Lord is at Yahweh's right hand, meaning the Father's right hand in this case, or if that's just the Son of Man in Daniel. But you're right, the right hand it could be a literal right hand, or it could be a um, a being operating in a position of power.
Yeah,
And it could be angelic, it could be, two powers, one power of Yahweh operating through angels, operating himself, operating directly with Moses. Well, we just got a ton of choices there.
indeed.
So the question is does the scripture lock it down?
Right. And this is where commentaries and apocryphal literature and Targumim come into play.
Mm-hmm.
And then same thing with, rabbinic Mishnah, performing midrash on the text to kind of fill out the little empty holes of, could it be this? How do we explain this here? Is there a way to solve that? Um, which keeps rabbis very busy, don't you know?
Yeah, well, they got to have something to do.
Right. So the idea is that if angels were witnessing or being the right hand of Yahweh to deliver the Torah to Moses, the overall point is that these heavenly beings are active participants not only in heaven but on earth as well, executing the will of the council president.
Yep. And the other thing for folks to kind of pick up in that is so there's a reason why you're mentioning, like the Targum and um, Jewish sources beyond uh, canon, and also even stretching out into A&E, uh, non-Hebrew sources, pagan sources. Um, the it seems like, especially the first five books, I can't necessarily my own self. I don't have a thought about the uh, anything outside of the Pentateuch, but the Pentateuch for certain, Moses is writing that into the eyes and ears of Israel in order to give them something that is attesting to a polemical argument that he's making that says this is true. The surrounding pagan religions, uh, what it is that they say. their moving parts and pieces of their religions um, are going to try and fake this. They're going to try and put their own sheet music to the tune. But here's the proper music. Here's the right way to look at this. So he's not just writing a story, he's writing a polemic. So it's fair, that being the case, it's fair to bring in all of these surrounding writings and history, archaeology, so on and so forth, in order to understand not just the story that Moses is telling, but what he's telling it against. And he's trying to hold a line against the surrounding cultures and religions so that Israel doesn't get lost. Because we see it happen all through the Old Testament. They're constantly running off to other gods. And the reason they're doing that is because a lot of what it is that is in those other religions is very close
Mhm.
and it's a good imitation. So, I forget where's the point where I forget what king it is. They've completely lost uh, the scripture. It's been hidden, tucked away, and suddenly somebody finds it and brings it to the king,
Oh,
and they're
that's King
like,
Hezekiah.
"Yeah." They're like,
Yeah,
"Oh my
yeah,
God, we've got all this text. Let's read this."
yeah.
The fact that they lost it is the point.
Hmm.
So, and I just mentioned that so that folks can understand that this is why it's fair to reach beyond the canon. You don't get um, you know, myopia to where you think the only thing you can look at is 66 books. You've got to look beyond
Oh,
because
yeah.
they're looking beyond
Oh,
all
yeah.
of them.
Because churches will really hone in on the 66.
They will. And they'll try to make you feel bad for looking at anything beyond those 66. You're
That's
a
rude.
heretic.
That's rude, though. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry for the
Yeah.
aside. It was a
Yeah. So,
long margin note.
indeed. But PSA, study your Bible and look at the cultural context in which it was written,
Correct.
because you'll have a lot deeper insight as to what's going on.
Hmm.
And it's a lot more religiously fulfilling.
Yes. And it also pushes back against your own opinions. So you don't let your opinions be the interpretive mechanism of your 3,500-year-old scripture.
What? I never have a bad opinion, Larry.
Oh, yeah, you do.
I know.
Me
For
too.
those that don't know, I'm being sarcastic.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
I'm not a know-it-all. I don't know everything. I'm
That,
a student. I learn.
that's
I'm a
right.
student.
We all do.
Yeah.
Well, at least the folks that are here, that's what we do. Scouts honor.
Right. So we're going to continue with the next slide here.
Hmm.
So he goes in and dives into what do angels do. So now we're moving into like the purpose, because now that we've spent the last first chapter defining our terms, what do and trying to at least scratch at the surface of what these different words mean and what their role is. This is kind of trying to bring it together into a cohesive bullet point list. So firstly, he identifies that they contribute to council resolutions. And guess what verses he uses?
Yep.
First Kings 22:19
I couldn't have guessed.
again. And then the thousands upon thousands that are in the Ancient of Days' court in Daniel 7. And then and while they're there, they bear witness to Yahweh's decrees and judgments. Job 38, that's the morning star shouting for joy passage, which could go either way, as we've discussed before, but he insists this. Um, so also they bear witness to the choice of prophets in Jeremiah 23. And they also are there to witness Yahweh's lawsuits against Israel and others in Psalm 50, verses 7 to 8 and 16 and 17. And then finally, they also assist in governance on the material world. And this is where he touches on a very interesting topic of Job 1. Because who's there in Job 1? The Satan. Ooh.
Yep.
So, yeah, so what happens is, God, when the angels show up for to, pay their respects to Yahweh, um, the Satan shows up and he says, "Hey, God, see this guy Job? I bet you, if you let me curse him, he will deny you to your face."
Yep.
And Yahweh says, "You're on, but don't kill him." And
Yep.
then so yeah, but that interaction highlights that the Satan not only features prominently in the story, but also the way he interacts with God in the council.
Yeah, he's a little antagonistic.
Well, that's the point. He is the Ha-Satan.
Hmm.
Yeah, because Ha-Satan in Hebrew means like an enemy or someone to stand against you in an accusatory way.
Hmm.
And one fun way to think about this, because we'll go deeper into Satan when we talk about the demons, if we ever get to the demon study. I'm hoping we can. But
Yeah.
down the line, we're planning for a demon study. We're going to do a much deeper dive into the Ha-Satan.
Right.
But the idea is that Ha-Satan is a part of God's heavenly council.
Yep.
Because often we read John Milton and Dante Alighieri, and it's that, oh yeah, Satan has this underworld kingdom of evil and darkness, which sounds pretty metal, but however, that's not the original Jewish thing. That's actually a Christian creation.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Well, and to be sure, so that everybody it doesn't get it wrong, it's actually Yahweh that engages the Satan. He's the
yes,
one who calls him out and says, "Have you considered Job?"
indeed.
And so the point of that being is that um he's a council member, but he's also subject to the order of Yahweh. Yahweh is the head of this thing, and
Oh yeah.
he doesn't just come waltzing in and confronting Yahweh. Yahweh is actually the one that engages him first and instigates
Mm-hmm.
that, and then the whole conversation starts flowing. And of course, he's a little bit of a snot face about it. And you're right. God says, "Okay, let's do this."
Yeah, because even how Satan approaches that, Satan is still the Satan is still subject to the divine council president.
Yep.
And so one thing that I like to solve this issue of the Satan is that he's God's prosecution lawyer.
Yep.
Because literally, like Hasatan, like part of the definition of the word in Hebrew is that he stands against you to accuse you, in the most literal sense of how that word is conveyed, right? Is that he
Right.
accuses, yeah, he stands against you to accuse you. And we see that the Hasatan does that all the time, even in Zechariah 1, I think it is, where where the angels are lifting Yeshua, the high priest, from the captivity to clean him up in order to turn him into a priest. But Hasatan busts in the door and says, "Oh no, you don't! This guy, have you seen what this guy did? Oh, I got a laundry list. Like, you cannot do that. He's unclean. You can't." And they say, "Silence, Satan. We're going to do this anyway."
Hmm.
And then there's also that passage about Michael and Satan wrestling over the body of Job. And so you have interactions in the council between them and the Hasatan figure.
Yep.
But the Hasatan is a job description. It's an adjective. It's not a noun.
And just so for all the folks later down the line who might be listening to this, I'm gonna take just a second to point out something where I was just saying that you've got to look beyond just the 66 books, because what you'll see is you'll see Moses not just telling a story, but he's telling a story that's designed to give them an anchor, because there's a whole bevy of surrounding stories. So one of the surrounding stories here is the Enuma Elish, and there's a direct parallel between about five or six things out of the First Kings 22 scene that Micaiah paints there about the divine council. So, uh, so like the first one, Yahweh is sitting on his throne in First Kings, but in the Enuma Elish, it says they entered in and they filled the court before Anshar. So you've got the same scene, but what you've got is you've got, as you I think you were just pointing out, only Yahweh is seated. The rest of them are not, or if they are, they're seated lower. But here you have them all filing into the court, and uh, then they're it in looks like book 2 138, all the great gods who issue decrees, which of course is a link over to things like where is it in Daniel where the watchers issue a decree.
Yes,
Yeah,
and Heiser goes into that too.
right. Sorry if I'm jumping ahead there. I just mainly want to point out that the Enuma Elish is another thing that you can look at to see the types of things that the Old Testament is pushing against and anchoring Israel so that they don't go spinning off into other pagan religions and lose their identity.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Larry.
Hmm.
So, so just to briefly wrap up on the Hasatan, what we learn is that from Zechariah 1 and also in Job 1, where the Hasatan features, is that these divine council members, what I'm going to call DCMs, they go to and fro about the earth. So they're traveling worldwide.
Hmm.
So because it's their job to govern and administer God's will and decrees on earth, right?
Hmm.
And of course, the DCMs also administer the nations. See Deuteronomy 32, 8 through 9, Psalm 82, 89. You can link Deuteronomy 32a with the table of nations, and there's like 70 of them. So,
Hmm.
you know. And what's interesting is that tradition carries of national angels.
What do you mean?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
so, more on what angels do is that they have responsive obedience to divine decisions. Now, a lot of this is going to sound kind of redundant.
Mm.
It's like, yeah, they listen, yeah, they're there and they're present and stuff, and they do what God says. Okay, but we have like eight. Yeah, but we need to make a substantial book out of this for
Well,
Heiser.
yeah, but you do want it to be anchored in scripture. You want to be able for folks to be able to point at stuff, especially if it's the first time they're ever hearing it.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, as much as I'd love to retcon that, in their lives that they've already read this and they're on board with it and they know it, so they can be prepared on the off chance they talk to me about it. We don't live in that world, so.
no, no.
So, so what we have here is they have responsive obedience to divine decisions. God, and one thing I like, a phrase I came up with is called a holy postman, because they are messengers. They are basically postmen. They deliver divine decrees, okay, and also execute them per the divine will, right?
Mm.
Yeah, and they get called malachim in Zechariah 1:9, 2:3, and Daniel 4.
Mm.
explicitly called malachim,
Mm.
which is that which carries over to that Greek angeloi
Mm-hmm.
for being a messenger, right, or a holy postman.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Uh, DCMs, including watchers, participate in the execution of the decree. I just said that. However, they are always subordinate to the divine council president, as shown by Daniel 4:17 and literally every other verse.
Mm.
Yeah, First Kings 22. The Ancient of Days passage, and anytime that the divine council is shown, God is always is shown seated on the throne, governing the council. All right. Now, also part of what they do is they also explain divine activity. Being mediators, like Job 4:17 through 18, they are in a prime spot to explain visions, like we get in Daniel 8, Daniel 9, Daniel 10. Dreams are supernatural events connected to divine council president decrees.
Mm.
So again, like in the revelation of John, and he says is that an angel met me and said, "Here, I will show you the meaning of these things."
Mm.
Yeah, and we see that in apocalyptic literature a lot, where you have a heavenly tour, or what gets called a heavenly tour guide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what this role is here. Um, and then another part of that is record keeping.
Mm.
They keep record of human behavior, which is Isaiah 65, Daniel 7:10, and Daniel 10:21. But also, this tradition carries into the third Enoch, where Samael and Dubiel catalog the sins of national Israel for the seraphim to dispose of. But what I want to do is I want to actually read that passage for you guys,
Mm.
so you can understand where I'm coming from, because I came upon this just reading and I thought this was really interesting
Mm.
that they mentioned this. So in the Hebrew book of Enoch, which is or the third one, in the angelological section, there's a question here that says, "Why are they called seraphim?" And he says, "Because they burn seraph, the writing tables of Satan. Every day, Satan is sitting together with Samael, the prince of Rome, and with Dubael, the prince of Persia, and they write the iniquities of Israel on writing tablets, which they hand over to the seraphim, in order that they may present them before the Holy One, blessed be He, so that He may destroy Israel from the world. But the seraphim know from the secrets of the Holy One, blessed be He, that He desires not." Oh goodness, I've lost my spot. "He desires not, that is, his people Israel should perish. What do the seraphim? Every day they accept them from the hand of Satan, and burn them in the burning fire over and against the high and exalted throne, in order that they may not come before the Holy One, blessed be He, at the time when He is sitting upon the throne of judgment, judging the whole world in truth."
Mm.
And what that does is that ties into Yahweh's covenant with Abraham's, that I will not wipe your seed out from the earth.
Right.
And God says that no, and God said, I have that eternal covenant with you, Jacob, that your people may be few, but I will not wipe them out from the face of the earth.
Right. Right.
Right. So yeah, so it's a follow-up on that promise. But you see in third Enoch, if you date it to late first century, early second century, or sometimes scholars will want to date third Enoch even to the seventh century,
Mm.
you still have this idea that there are heavenly divine council members interacting with the throne and the council and writing and record keeping.
Yeah. Which is a behavior that is also found in First Enoch, for sure.
Oh yeah.
It's going on all over the place. It's just a part of the whole environment of Second Temple era, and it's unquestionable that it carries on for quite a long time
Mhm.
into the Christian era,
Oh yeah.
you know. I mean, how are you going to write good Christian fiction if you don't have these kinds of things?
Right, because there's a reason why Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy and John Milton stuff was so good.
Hmm.
People ate that up. And
Yep.
actually we use that to define our how demons work because we just find it so fascinating, you know.
And because we're just shallow enough that we don't check our sources.
No, we don't. But also, tradition and culture will do what tradition and culture does.
Correct.
Not that they're wrong. It's just they're missing. It's just they're missing the why and the mechanics of the substrate that informs
Hmm.
what comes out.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. They're
Right.
happy with the surface. They don't want to excavate all the way to the basement.
Right. Because even when the demon Belphegor is talked about, that we don't understand that Belphegor is actually from the Septuagint, translating the word Baal-Peor, weird, which was that episode in the wilderness
Mm,
where the Israelites went and worshipped other gods.
mm,
And so Belphegor becomes, I think he's the demon of the sin of apathy.
mm,
Yeah, but again, but that's where that comes from. Is that is Baal Peor in the Hebrew, but in the Greek it translates to Belphegor, and then Belphegor ends up becoming a demon, significant of that, and then the tradition goes and snowballs,
mm.
which is kind of interesting. Even yeah, so yeah, but that we'll touch on that in the demons presentation, but I think this wraps us up for now
Oh,
with our angels presentation. It's going to be a little short tonight because I want to get ahead on chapter 3.
got it.
So
Got it. Got it.
I'm going to come back to our. Oh, wait, hold on. Hold the phone. Have I ended? Have you seen me end my screen share?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I got one more. I
Oh,
thought I didn't, but I got one more. I apologize,
keep
everybody.
going. It's still recording. So,
Okay, good. All right. I apologize, everyone. We're going to come back. All right. So to wrap this up in chapter 2, like what do angels do? Is that they also make up Yahweh's host? Because of course we have the term Yahweh Tsevaot or Shabeoth of armies of Yahweh of hosts of armies of many of these heavenly retinue, right? So they also have the job to praise Yahweh, as sort of like his personal choir. And even when angelologists touch on the subject, they actually organize classes of angels into choirs,
mm,
which is connected to the purpose of praising Yahweh.
mm,
Like when the seraphim say kadosh kadosh kadosh, that's they would probably fit into a particular choir of angel,
mm,
right? In Psalm 29:1, Heiser says B'nai Elim, but he translates this as sons of God, even though Elim is plural.
mm,
And then Psalm 103, where he connects with, like praise him, all ye angels, all you hosts of heaven, stuff like that. So that
mm,
informs us that the heavenly council is praising Yahweh.
mm.
And then the fallen watchers would not be included as operable divine council members per Heiser's understanding. It's like though former divine council members, they've left their first estate and either roam about the earth, like we see in Jubilees, or are imprisoned below the earth, which happens in Jubilees and First Enoch, have drastically restricted operational parameters within that tradition. For those that haven't read in the book of Jubilees, there's a passage where it talks about how the fallen watchers finally get taken to task for descending and mating with human women. And so a bunch of that, and Yahweh says that a bunch of them are going to be put in a prison under the earth, right?
Right.
Well, one intercedes on them and says, okay, well, only 1/10 is going to continue to roam about the earth, and they are going to be under the control of this being called Mastema. And Mastema is a divine council member who essentially holds the leash on the spirits of the fallen watchers that go about the earth.
Right.
Right. And then the rest of them being imprisoned below the earth. Enoch the scribe goes and meets with them, where they ask him, "Hey, can you put in a word for it with the big man for us to get us out?" And Enoch says, "No, I'm not going to do that. I'm just an observer."
Hmm.
Yeah, but even he even tells God, and God's like, "No, I'm not gonna pull him out of there. No, absolutely not."
Yep.
So they're in there. So
Yep.
so even with even the and Fallen Watcher story, Semyaza and his company and his hosts actually they were divine council members until they went down
Yep.
and disobeyed.
Yep.
So some else thinking. So that's why they are not included in the heavenly host, right?
Yep.
As Yahweh has his angels participate in governing of the world and operating through it, we as humanity also do the same and both reflect the rulership of Yahweh over the cosmos. So he caps off chapter 2 saying it's that with all this stuff that angels do, we in a way we do too as humans, because we both have that job of reflecting Yahweh's kingship over the cosmos.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the image bearer concept,
Yep.
or the toot.
Yep.
Yeah, like the hit T-shirt "Toots for Jesus" created by Larry Ricks. You can get over on his Amazon store, right?
Yep.
All right, so that will conclude my slide.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I'm sure this time.
Anything to say in closing?
Not really. No, just next will be chapter 3, and I'll be seeing if I can milk anything more out of this because there's a lot of redundancies in this book. Um,
Mm.
yeah, and it wears on you a little bit after a while because I think I did this on audio, and around chapter 5 or something, it's kind of brushing, it's starting to brush over the same information
Mm.
again,
Mm.
and it gets a little redundant. So, but
Right. Okay.
if we but if we were but I believe this would culminate in Heiser. It would help if he constructed a diagram to show where all of these would fit. I may have to
Mm.
draw one myself, like a Clarence Larkin chart or something,
Mm.
to explain how, to sort of explain how, Heiser's proposal in a visual way.
That would be handy.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I'll see if I can come up with something to make it easier. But it is based on like this divine council stuff is absolutely ancient Near East, Indo-Aryan, like par for the course.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so again, it's a Canaanite religion
Yep.
ultimately.
Yep.
So it's seated in that context, and so you ask a polytheist, it's like all of this is just, or even a Hindu, they get this,
Yep.
like, yeah, this makes sense to them because it's just obvious to them. They have the context for it. So have I
And
stopped my screen share?
you have, and I'll go ahead and stop the recording, and then we'll pick it up again next week.
Thank you, Nicholas. That was really good.
Well, Susan, thank you for attending. We're really glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Actually, we're glad for all of you who are here or who are listening to this slideshow. I appreciate this because I do this for you because I want to share this with you. And this is just fun.
Yep.
Yes.
Love it.
Okay.